I'm Amy Tipton, and I'm the Assistant Director at the UNC Charlotte Botanical Gardens. Today I wanted to walk you through some of our woodland flowers that are blooming right now, with a special emphasis on some of what are thought to be the earliest lineages of flowering plants to evolve on the planet. Behind me here you see a vast bed of wild ginger. Wild ginger is one of the plants that we will be talking about today. So there are two different lines of thought regarding early angiosperms or flowering plants and how they evolved. One is that they evolved with the first appearance of woody plants, small trees and shrubs in the Magnolia group, Magnoliids, which includes not only the Magnolia family, but also several of the other plants within our native flora, which I'll show you today. And the alternate hypothesis is that our earliest angiosperms were in the form of little herbaceous things similar to this ginger, which do not have a woody stalk, but which do have traits of both dicots and monocots. So dicots are plants that have veined netting on their leaves, and you'll notice in this plant we do have netted venation. So that's one of the key characters of a dicot. However, one of the key characters of a monocot are flowers in parts of three, in three parts. So here on this ginger, you see 3 sepals, and inside you see parts of 6. So there are several little herbaceous plants like this that are running the gamut between monocots and dicots, and these are called paleo herbs. So we'll talk about these two different hypotheses, but first let's take a little bit of a look around the gardens. So this is the Canadian wild ginger, Assirram canadensis. One of my favorite things to do in the springtime is to come out into the beds, pull back the leaves of the wild ginger and some of its family members, and look for these precious little flowers. So the flowers are born close to the ground. They are not showy as far as terribly colorful. They tend to be in hues of brown, green, burgundy, and sometimes white. But they're at the perfect height for crawling insects. And so crawling insects will come to pollinate these flowers, and the reward that they get is fleshy to lay their eggs in, or they could also get other types of rewards, but not floral rewards like things like honeysuckle that have prolific nectaries. So we'll look at some more of plants in this group. But let's look at the different things growing in this bed. It's really a lovely time at the gardens. I'm in the VanLandingham Glen, which is our native woodland garden. Here, very unsuspecting, is another member of the same family that the wild ginger is in. Wild ginger is in the birthwort family. This too is a birthwort plant. The name of the family is Aristolochiaceae. Now the wild ginger is in the genus Assirram, but these are heart leaves. These are little brown jugs. And if you look underneath the foliage here, you see a similar yet distinct flower from the ginger. It too attracts crawling insects for pollination. These types of flowers that are suspected to be early in the evolutionary timeline of flowering plants, they don't have the showy flowers, but they do have stinky flowers typically, and that stench attracts insects that eggs in flesh, but instead of laying them in flesh, they'll lay them in the fleshy flower of these plants. Here we see more ginger. It's a really beautiful ground cover. One of our most common questions when we do our spring and fall plant sales is, what is a good ground cover? Well, wonderful shade that home gardeners should consider for growing. Okay, here we're coming up a path where we have several different representatives of the Magnoliids. Over here you see a tree that I'll get closer to so you can see it in detail, but this is our sweet bay magnolia, Magnolia virginiana. Sweet bay magnolia is a semi-evergreen which grows native here, particularly as you get closer to the coast. And you notice, even though these are little raggedy leaves, the leaves have a white waxy finish on the underside and a glossy green finish on the upper side. They have small magnolia flowers, which all magnolia flowers look pretty similar, and we'll take a look at those closer here in a minute. Now, in the magnolia group, but not in the magnolia family, so there are several families grouped, is this plant. Also a small tree like the sweet bay magnolia. This is pawpaw. Pawpaw, our native undervalued fruit tree, which grows in colonies, and you see we have a colony of small pawpaws growing here next to the stream. They do like streamside, moist environments. And here's a pawpaw as well. You can see that glossy brand new foliage. Pawpaws also have this dark brown fuzzy velvety bud, which is a good way to tell them apart from other shrubs and small trees in the winter time. Here you see this bud in detail. You can actually see the veins of that leaf in the bud, because this tree is actually related to largely more tropical trees, the custard apple family. And the custard apple trees, because they're in the tropics, they don't need the coverings over the buds to protect the buds. And that tree has continued in the pawpaw, even though the pawpaw is native here in our woodlands. Here's a detail of the nice smooth of the pawpaw. Pawpaws produce berries, which you wouldn't necessarily think are berries. The berries are large, about 5 or so inches long, and they have multiple dark brown seeds in them. and that's the definition of a berry with multiple seeds. So even though it's the size of a small banana, um, which actually bananas are also berries, FYI, it does not resemble what we think of berries, such as blueberries. Okay. Let's take a closer look at the pawpaw flower again, if I can reach one and get it in focus. Or maybe we'll just look from below here. So even though you can't tell the details of this pawpaw blossom, you can tell that it's triangular in silhouette. So the pawpaw has the 3 sepals and 3 petals, which paleo herbs tend to have, even though it has a leaf that has some parallel venation but netted as well. See the cross veins there? And then another plant I wanted to show you that is related to the magnolias through the Magnoliid group is sweet shrub. And here we see sweet shrub flowers borne opposite across a stem. Let's get a detail of those. Notice there's a theme in these flowers, burgundy and green. These have multiple floral parts that you actually have too many, and they're a various number depending on which flower you're looking at. So floral number is not as important in the determination, but the presence of so many structures and their arrangement spirally around the center of the flower indicates that this is an old group to evolve. It evolved very early. Now, sweet shrub has many different common names. One is Carolina allspice. One is sweet shrub. And one which a lot of people have not heard of is sweet bubbies. And the reason that the plant is called sweet bubbies is because in the mountains, women would use the crushed stems, which are very fragrant and spicy, like allspice. They would use the crushed stems as a perfume, and they would tuck the stems in their bodices for sweet bubbies. Here we have lots of little seedlings that have come in, and it just so happens that these seedlings are in the Magnolia family. You might be surprised to learn that Tulip Tree, sometimes called tulip poplar or yellow poplar, although not in the poplar family, these are in the Magnolia family. So we get a nice, good, close look at some of these. Now, the tulip tree is in a different genus from our big leaf magnolia and our saucer magnolias, but in the same family. And the flowers are relatively similar as well. The flowers have multiple parts. They have multiple petals, multiple sepals, multiple male and female structures inside that are spirally arranged around the axis of the flower. Okay. Let's continue walking and see what we can find. The gardens is just chock full of things to look at. Even when I select one theme. I just keep on coming across examples. So this is a small sapling. It's about 3 feet tall of big leaf magnolia. Big leaf magnolia is a native magnolia. It's a deciduous magnolia. We actually have several species of deciduous magnolias in our native flora in North Carolina. This one is a plant that is known for the largest leaves of any tree, angiosperm tree in North America. These leaves, although they're babies now, they will reach the size of about 3 feet in length. In addition, they have huge magnolia flowers, and the magnolia flowers can be in excess of 8 inches across, which makes them the largest tree flower in North America as well. Can you spot the heartleaf? Let's see if it has flowers. It does. Look at those. Aren't they beautiful? Now, you may not have seen it, but I saw an ant. And that's important to the biology and ecology of these plants, as it is with many of our spring wildflowers. Ants are responsible for disbursement or dispersal of many of our wildflower seeds. Seeds within the hexastylus group or the heartleaf group, as well as the wild gingers, our violets, trillium, and many, many other plants have on the body of the seed a structure called an elaiosome. It's a fatty structure full of protein and calories, and the structure is highly prized by ants. The ants collect the seeds for those fatty structures and put them in their burrows in heaps after they harvest the elaiosomes. And as a result, you get groupings of plants like this. So here is a white violet, Viola striata. You see little clumps of it here and there. The same was true with the wild ginger we were looking at earlier. These seeds will sprout in these ant dens and produce clumps of flowers. So the ants are just as important as the pollinators for the life history of these plants. Okay, across the stream here, actually on this side of the stream but leaning across the stream, is one of our big leaf magnolias. Our big leaf magnolias have their show of flowers in mid-May to mid-June typically. Right now it looks like kind of a sticky little tree. The buds are unfurling, but they still seem relatively sparse. But once those 3 foot leaves start to unfurl, it's as if you're sitting under an umbrella, an enormous umbrella, and the flowers are born way up in the trees. Obviously, this is the work of ants. Here we have some pollinators busy on the phacelia. and more ginger. So I've collected a few things I wanted to show you specifically regarding what we've talked about today, so maybe you can get a clearer image. And we have also added photos to the feed that you can look at. But here we have the wild ginger, Assirram canadensis. This is in the birthwort family, as I mentioned earlier, Aristolochiaceae. Notice the three-parted flower in burgundy, very attractive to ground-dwelling insects. In the Hexastylus genus, we have little brown jugs, and here you see a decent amount of color variation. We have the deep burgundy flowers up to a green flower, and everything in between. When these first arise underneath of the leaves in the spring, they're pale peach colored little structures, and then their calyx, their sepals open and look like this. You can tell on this flower in the back that the insects have been enjoying it, but the flower doesn't mind because that encourages pollination. Here we have another native Hexastylus, Hexastylus minor. Has a more petite leaf, more of a rounded tip, and then more of a flared, sepaled flower. We also have a member of the birthwort family that's native to North Carolina that is a woody vine. It's called the Dutchman's pipe. And we do have an example in the garden. But I wanted to show you this one, which is not native. This is the white-veined Dutchman's pipe from South America. And you notice that even in the pipevine form within this family, the leaves are still relatively heart-shaped, and there's some colorful variegation along the leaf surface. Then I wanted to show you in detail the big leaf magnolia flower. I'm sorry, leaf. The flowers we have to wait some for. This is just a baby leaf, but it's already the size of my hand. And here we have a cultivar, Magnolia sunburst. I collected the sunburst so that we can see the multiple stamen structure and pistil structures that are spirally arranged around that floral center. Also within the magnolia family, but not native, is the banana shrub. We have this growing in our Harwood garden, along with the magnolia sunburst. This has a very strong banana-type fragrance, but not much of a showy flower. Even these flowers, they're creamy, a little bit of burgundy, but not hugely showy. And then within the Magnoliids, but not in the magnolia family, are the pawpaw, which is in the custard apple family, and the sweet shrub. The one at the bottom is our native sweet shrub, or Carolina allspice. And the one at the top is also a cross, Hartlage wine. It's a cross between a native and another species. So I hope that you've enjoyed our walk through the woods today and a little bit of background on some of the earliest angiosperm or flowering plant lineages. The verdict is still out regarding whether or not the paleo herbs were the earliest plants which dicots and monocots stemmed from, or if it was the woody Magnoliids that were the base of the evolutionary tree. But research continues, and I would encourage you to look around when you come to the gardens, see if you can see some of these plants and find their ancient characters. I'll be back with you next week to talk about the monocots, which includes trillium, orchids, and lilies. So I look forward to seeing you then. Enjoy your week and stay healthy.